Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the previous episodes of Ummatan Wasatan, we reflected on the importance of balance, discipline, humility, purpose, and self accountability. We then moved from the individual to the community. We discussed how strong communities require institutions and how institutions themselves cannot survive when division, hostility, and the loss of brotherhood take hold. Today, we address another challenge that can quietly weaken an entire community. A challenge that often appears justified on the surface, yet can become deeply destructive if left unchecked. The challenge of victimhood without responsibility. Before we begin, let us be absolutely clear. Islam does not deny oppression. Islam does not deny injustice. Islam does not deny discrimination. The Qur'an speaks about oppression. The prophets faced oppression, and throughout history, many people have suffered injustice at the hands of others. Recognizing injustice is not weakness. Ignoring injustice is not wisdom. And standing against oppression is part of our faith. But there is an important distinction that we must understand. Recognizing a problem is not the same as being defined by it. Acknowledging oppression is not the same as surrendering to helplessness. And awareness without action can eventually become stagnation. One of the dangers facing Muslim community today is that we sometimes become so focused on what others are doing to us that we stop asking what we should be doing ourselves. We become experts at identifying obstacles, but we become less willing to examine our own shortcomings. The Quran repeatedly calls believers toward self-reflection, not because external problems do not exist, but because lasting change begins with internal reform. This is a principle we have encountered throughout this series. In episode 7, we discussed emotional reactions. In episode 8, we discussed the loss of direction. In episode 9, we discussed ego and self-accountability. In episode 10, we discussed institution building. In episode 11, we discussed division and brotherhood. A common thread runs through all of them. Communities become stronger when they focus on what they can improve. They become weaker when they focus only on what they cannot control. Consider education. It is easy to discuss the barriers that exist, but we must also ask, are we encouraging excellence? Are we building a culture of reading? Are we investing in knowledge? Are we helping the next generation develop skills and confidence? Consider professional success. It is easy to point to economic challenges, but we must also ask, are we pursuing excellence in our work? Are we developing competence? Are we creating opportunities for others? Consider leadership. It is easy to criticize leaders. Sometimes that criticism is justified, but communities must also ask, are we developing future leaders? Are we mentoring young people? Are we preparing responsible individuals to carry the burden of leadership tomorrow? The point is not to ignore external realities. The point is to avoid becoming trapped by them. Because a victim mentality eventually teaches people that effort is pointless. And when effort disappears, progress disappears with it. The life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ teaches us a different lesson. The early Muslims faced persecution, they faced hostility, they faced exclusion, they faced hardship, yet they did not allow hardship to become their identity. Their response was faith. Their response was perseverance. Their response was constructive action. This is the balanced path of Ummatan Wasatan. Neither denial not despair, neither naive optimism nor endless complaint. A believer sees reality as it is, recognizes injustice where it exists, works to correct it where possible, but never loses hope, never abandons responsibility, and never stops striving for improvement. Perhaps one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves is this: when I speak about the problems facing my community, do my words inspire action, or do they encourage helplessness? Do they create responsibility, or merely frustration? Do they bring people closer to solutions, or further into despair? Because communities do not rise through awareness alone. Awareness is only the beginning. Real change requires effort. It requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. And above all, it requires trust in Allah while fulfilling our responsibilities. As we conclude, remember, a balanced community recognizes injustice but refuses to be defined by it. It acknowledges challenges but does not surrender to them. It understands that while we cannot control every circumstance, we remain accountable for our response. And that is the difference between victimhood and resilience. One accepts defeat before the struggle begins. The other places its trust in Allah and continues to strive. In the next phase of this series, we will move beyond the individual and the community to examine the wider condition of the Muslim world and the global consequences of abandoning the balanced path of Ummatan Wasatan. Until then, let us remember, awareness without responsibility leads to stagnation, but awareness combined with faith, effort, and accountability becomes a path toward renewal. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.